For our experiment, we chose cornflower and little bluestem to show interspecific competition between plants because cornflower is considered a weed while little bluestem is a grass. We used 6 containers containing Miracle-Gro soil. Cornflower and little bluestem were each placed into 2 separate containers by themselves, and they were also placed into 2 containers together. Plain toothpicks represented where the cornflower seeds were planted, and purple toothpicks represented where the little blue stems were planted. The plants were given 200 milliliters of water every 3 days and were measured every 2 weeks.
For the first week, we saw that cornflower was growing very rapidly and quickly, and little blue stem started growing later on in the week, and it's what we expected when knowing that cornflower is a weed and grows very quickly, and that little blue stem is a grass and will take longer to germinate. As you can see, the densities of the species of plants are larger when they are by themselves, but when they're in the same pot together, the cornflower is taking over. Okay, so for the past 6 weeks, we have looked at the growth of grass and a weed called cornflower. And as you can tell by themselves, they have been able to grow. Cornflower has gone a little out of control. But in our experiment, you can tell that cornflower just takes over everything. Like the grass has barely grown. It has taken over space, all the nutrients. As you can look at comparison between the grass here and the grass in the mix, it stunted its growth throughout. Same with the other mix too.
This graph shows the average heights for cornflower and little bluestem in separate containers. Grass A and B showed an increase of growth throughout the 6 weeks. The overall average height for the little bluestem in the containers by themselves is about 70 millimeters. Cornflower A and B showed an increase of growth between weeks 2 and 4, but a decrease in week 6. This could be because there were no longer enough nutrients in the soil to support further growth. The overall average height of the cornflower in the containers by themselves is about 100 millimeters. These 2 graphs show the growth of the 2 containers with cornflower and little bluestem planted together. Both plants show the same growth patterns as being planted by themselves. However, the overall average height is different for the little bluestem. The average height for the little bluestem is about 55 millimeters compared to the 70 millimeters when planted by itself. This could be because the cornflower begins to germinate multiple days before the little bluestem and takes most of the nutrients. The cornflower was also denser, which caused the little bluestem to not get as much sunlight.
There have been a lot of studies done on interspecific competition between plants. And one we found was from Casper and Jackson, and they said competition below ground can be stronger and involve many more neighbors than above ground competition. And in their research, they included a figure, and in the figure, you can see that the larger plant has more root density and more surface area and rooting depth. So the larger plant has the ability to maintain more nutrients, spread its roots faster and wider, and basically outcompeting the other smaller plant that's in the figure. And from what we saw in our experiment, the cornflower was able to outcompete the grass and grow faster and much larger, and we assume that the root size will show that in our experiment.
We can accept our hypothesis because the overall average height of the cornflower was larger than the little bluestem when placed together. According to Weiner, plant competition is asymmetric in the relationship between size and growth in crowded populations. Our experiment shows that the sizes and the growth of both types of plants were not the same because they were in a crowded area. The cornflower was able to acquire most of the nutrients before the little bluestem, allowing it to grow taller. Arts also mentions that interspecific competition is an important determinant of the structure and dynamics of plant communities. The significance of this experiment was to illustrate how different plant species interact with one another and compete for different resources.